Welcome to the Cosmic Journey. I am Theron. I'm your cosmic weirdo. I am an astrologer, so I use the planets and the stars to bring self awareness to individuals who like to change and become unstuck in life. If you're new here, thank you for stopping by. I hope that you stay and be a part of our community. If you are returning, thank you for coming back. Thank you for hanging with me, and yeah, I'm happy to see you here. So I do ask that you all interact with this video by liking, comment, sharing, and subscribing for sure. This will help other people be able to hear this information and see, get this out to people who may need it and want to know this information. Okay. So, right now, we're about to start a series called The Planets Through the Houses. We're going to discuss the characteristics of these planets as they move through We are in the eighth house. This cosmic journey through the eighth house will have multiple layers because the eighth house has multiple layers. The sun, I keep singing money in the power, because that is here in the eighth house, but that's not all what the eighth house is about. The eighth house is about transformation. That is the energetic death and rebirth of some aspect of who we are. Will have to be burned all the way down and rebirthed to or birthed into something new. And a lot of times the eighth house, which is ruled by Pluto, and it's also the natural house of Scorpio, a lot of times the phoenix rising is used in symbolism to the transformation that goes on with Pluto or Scorpio. So it's going to also pertain to this eighth house. Eighth house, as far as money concerns, that's why the money aspect of it is really how we relate to other people's money that is not our own. That could be your spouse income, that could be debt, taxes, if you could be a banker and or investments, and you could be a banker and you could handle other people's money. Yeah, it can be inheritance where somebody died and left you money, or legacy. Somebody, let's just say you're holding on to an heirloom, someone's legacy was passed on to you. That's all here in the eighth house. Now, eighth house, the power part, they do love sexuality. One's intimacy is in the eighth house. Now, intimacy, it can deal with sex intimacy, but it's also just intimacy in their relationships. Eighth house is this automatic built-in skepticism. So learning to trust, have healthy attachments, all are within this eighth. Characteristics for the eighth house, you have psychology, you have interest in the occult, so divination, astrology, any of those interests are here in the eighth house. Like I said, psychology or mental health sometimes can be here in the eighth house. The sun being in the eighth house of transformation, the sun will be the core of who you are. Pulling that into the eighth house, you may not be as outgoing and vibrant as you would be in other houses. There may be just an internal, you might be driven more internally with the sun being in the eighth house. However, with the sun in the eighth house, there will almost always be an transformation of the core of who you are, the ego, a transformation, a death and rebirth of the ego. As you age, circumstances and issues will come up, and events will come up that, in a sense, you would pretty much deconstruct who you are and reconstruct that person. So as you grow older with the sun in the eighth house, if you went ahead and followed the lessons and Allow the transformation to happen. By the time you're as an adult, or even later in life, when you consider like the seasoned person in life, you will almost be unrecognizable. People would know who you are by looking at you, but they would have to really get to know you again, because that the core of who you are would have changed, would have shifted with the experiences that you've had in life. There is a chance that, again, you come in with a natural skepticism, so you, depending on how you've taken on this transformation, it could have made you not even trust people anymore. So you're having to learn to retrust, learning how to have an intimate, deep emotional connection with people, not necessarily sexual, but just that intimate, close bonding. Because of the lack of trust, it's hard for you to allow people in. So having healthy attachments might be something, depending on the experiences that you have. Um, on the other side, if things like you have taken on those lessons and those events and allow the transformation to come in, you're able to express yourself more freely. You're able to integrate that the shadow side in with the rest of you, and you pretty much are living kind of unapologetically. Um, you are able to express yourself sensually and sexually, however you please. Um, but there is going to be um, some transformation to the self, so you can get to that place. Being in the eighth house, it will be some deep emotional energy here. There'll be an intensified intuition. Someone may be using their psychic abilities or interest in the occult here. Um, it's just a deep emotional energy that they pull from, that they interact from. If they do, they can also be like psychologists here, um, dealing with some sort of mental health, or just in general, like using their intuition to help other people transform their lives, um, with a nurturing quality that comes with it. So, you know, Scorpio and Pluto can be known as kind of being like a harsh, harsh and matter of fact. And even though they're emotional water sign, um, they kind of have, they sometimes only seem like they have a lot of emotion into what they say. Have the moon here will bring that softness to the displacement in the eighth house. So the Scorpion, the stinger won't sting as much with the moon being placed here in the in the eighth house. Um, the eighth house would be issues with the mother could come up with a person in the eighth house, and that relationship may have gone through some transformation. Um, that's not to say whether, you know, however that the end result, the relationship may have been burned down and somehow rebuilt. It could be stronger. It could, it, because with, um, depending on how strong the insecurities and what have you that come up, this placement could stand in the way of their rebirths, regardless of what it is. I know I was talking about the mother, but I was just thinking, this person could stand in the way of their rebirth, depending on how strong and how intense some of their insecurities that may come up in relationships. It may be hard for them to let their guard down to allow the transformation to happen, and actually learn and grow from the transformation. But back to the mother, again, if they do go through the transformation with the mother, it could be a stronger bond once that relationship is rebuilt or reconstructed, or just on a better place because they have reconstructed it to a way where it feels safe for the Pluto placement. Eighth house can accentuate the sensuality and sexuality in this placement. Um, there's an attraction element that comes in, um, tied with the power. Venus placement here will probably have a clear understanding how powerful their sensuality, their sexuality is in their relationships. There's an attraction to money, other people's money. So they may bring in partnerships and relationships where somehow they're taken care of financially by an other. Whether for a spouse, it could just be a friendship, or it could be a significant other that they're not necessarily committed through marriage. They may have inheritance that comes to like they with Venus being here in the eighth house. Again, there's an attraction of pulling in money from outside sources. It's not necessarily an effort of them going out and working and getting the money. It's somehow they're receiving this money from the external world coming to them. um, it's a great place to be, but to attract finances that way, or inheritance, or like that legacy being passed, and a receiver of that legacy. Yeah. So Venus being here is not a bad place to be. Venus may move in silence, meaning that moving in silence. They're not going to necessarily broadcast what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's going to be between them and whoever else is involved. Um, but nonetheless, there is a social aspect about them. So they're going to get out and they're going to meet people, but they're not necessarily going to show their intimate parts of themselves to everybody. That's going to be a selective few that's going to be able to benefit from that that deep part of Venus. Now, they may use their sensuality and sexuality out in the world, but even there, that's another layer that they can. It's not necessarily something that's close to them. They're able to like that. They're not pulling people into their front row seat of their life. They can play that role way out there because they know their power and they know how they're going to attract people. But a very few will have a front row seat and to actually see that intimate side of them. Jupiter in the eighth house. Jupiter, depending on the sign that's here, will it expands every place that it's in. So the money aspect, this person, as far as other people's resources, other people's money, Jupiter could definitely have that person attract or have great gains with other people's money, great investment gains. Their spouse might be rich. Their inheritance, or coming from a rich family where a lot of money and inheritance comes to them, the legacy comes to them, but it's on a grand scale. It's not something that I guess the rest of us would experience. It's on a grand scale where their lifestyle can change from this legacy or from their spouse's income, on that. Um, because of their free spirit and their love for experimenting, to learn, to grow. Sex wise, they could be very experimental. They could come with experimental and adventurous, but could definitely be more of a some might think from a dark side. Think of like 50 Shades of Grey, in that type of, not dark, but you know what I mean, like just being on a little bit more of the risque, taboo side of sexual experimentation. Again, they like to experiment, adventure, grow, expand, and now, and taking risks is still part of here with Jupiter here in the eighth house. And for that, they may facilitate their own transformations because their risks, if it's a bad risk, depending on how risky it is, it can send them all the way down and having to rebuild themselves back up again. So they could have facilitated their own transformation instead of life events happening. But when life events happen, they're going to be on a grand scale as well, that they're going to have to allow something to burn away in order for something new to evolve. Mercury, the planet Mercury in the eighth house. The eighth house has a obsession component to it, and Mercury has an anxious component to it. Um, Here lies someone who could definitely ruminate over the past, ruminate over if they ever experience any betrayal, like have a hard time getting past experiences because they keep reliving it and keep analyzing it in their heads over and over and over again. This person would have to be able to um, allow them to learn, like understand and learn whatever lesson that needs to be learned and try to let it go. Because in this, they could stand in the way of their transformations because they're trying to analyze and control the process, where it's really you need to let go and let the process happen. Now, once this happens, having Mercury in the eighth house can accentuate some of the negotiating skills. Like this could be uh, somebody who is working in a banking or working with contracts. So somehow managing someone else's money and or like accounting or something like that. They would have that intellectual creativity to bring into this world in order to like help a person be successful managing their money, help them be able to possibly dive into business investments that actually give them great gain. Now they may give the advice that slow and steady wins the race in investments, but nonetheless they'll have that creativity to look and see at those contracts and that their finances and what have you, to see what's the best match for them and how to go about it to really um, get their rate of return. Because they're going to bring in, because also they're going to bring in another layer of diving in and doing that investigative work that Pluto already, or yeah, Pluto, or the eighth house already likes to dive deep and go deep within. Now you bring in an intellectual or logic component to dive in deep, and therefore it's a balance of the emotional side paired with the logical side as they're analyzing and figuring out what's the best way to for someone else to like gain their money to like the rate of return on their money. Mars being in the eighth house, Mars is a co-ruler of the eighth house. So like I said earlier, eighth house on the natural astrological chart is Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto, but it's also ruled by Mars. And I should have mentioned that. My apologies. Back when, like in the traditional astrology, Mars was the only ruler. As Pluto came on board, Pluto fit in also in the eighth house. So Mars is a fiery planet that is inside of a watery house, square or a watery sign per se. Or so with the eighth house, it becomes a watery house. Mars being a fiery planet, this is the one type of fire that still burns even though it's in a house in a watery house. And I say that because in most times when you look at our elements in the zodiac, a water sign can actually douse out the fiery energy. Um, causing the flame of that fiery energy to kind of dissipate, to be very low, to be held within. Here, not so much. The fiery energy of Mars is still holding its flame in the water container of the eighth house. So that deep emotional energy paired with that deep ambition and drive, here lies where someone can be obsessed with power, obsessed with winning, to dominating the world, taking over, um, wherever they are, whether it's work or whether it's in their home. They need to know that they are they need to the world to know that they are powerful. They know their power and they are not afraid to use it. With that being said, there's a lot of impulse, a lot of risk taking that comes along with, in decision making, that can come along with having that much power, especially if, um, you are seen as powerful from the world. You have a lot of people that can possibly look up to you and feed that power that you want, that that you have for yourself. Um, Being careful with decisions and not being so impulsive may be a challenge. Um, Therefore, there's always going to be some type of transformation with this. So early on, you may have had an abusive power, with that power that you have, and had to have made a decision or two that been a catalyst of your own transformation. And chances are, once you rebuild, you get a better understanding, a deep emotional connection to the power that you have, and you're able to, be more, still holding that power, but actually be of, um, not abusing it, and being of use to the world or the ones around you in that leadership that you've placed yourself in, and being more responsible, being able to make sound decisions and kind of be level headed, as you govern your subjects. That's how I want to look at it. Like that power, like you want to feel like the king or the queen, and you have subjects and you govern. That's fine. Um, we all, that's fine. But you have to, understand, when you haven't necessarily grown into that position, your impulses can cause you to tear it down by accident. And having to rebuild that will also actually make you a stronger, leader, make you a more powerful leader, and, more responsible. Better than being in the eighth house, um, with finances. Saturn will be good with, working with someone else's finances. They will take it very serious and hold responsibility for, someone else. So if, like, even if they married someone that had money, they would be the person that would do the accounting and making sure all the money is, the bills are being paid, everything is right. They would just take that, that management of the finances on them. If they have it as a career, like an accountant or an investment banker or something like that, they would take it very serious. They will be more like really responsible, making sure that the rate of return is like the main goal for, the person that the client that they have. As a partner in relationships, there, see, Saturn is another planet that is concerned about what people think about them, especially like their reputation. If there's any insecurities of how they feel like people will think about them, what people think about them, if there's some insecurities that lie there, it will be another layer of a challenge for them to be vulnerable, to, have intimate relationships, to, trust someone to be into their front row of their lives. Sexually, there may be a lot of inhibitions where there's a lot of insecurities that may form or may have formed over the years, and they're not necessarily as open sexually, um, as they would like to be. The transformations in life come probably later on in life, so they have had Saturn probably putting restrictions in places, and then later on in life the transformation comes, and that maybe become a easier transformation because they've gone through all the obstacles that Saturn has brought on. So when that transformation comes, um, they're able to let go and navigate it a little better. But it's definitely not easy because once a transformation comes into play, the person, for anybody, a transformation changes somebody from within. And that means that how you interact and who you are out in public will change also. And so that reputation of you may change, your status may change. And that may be hard for the Saturn placement to allow to happen, to just be open and let that happen. But once they do, they find success, they find the joy, um, they find the intimacy and the vulnerability connection that they are looking for. But it may be a difficult road, it may be a difficult climb, but in all, if they just allow the flow, allow the lessons to happen, um, on the other side there is like the gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. It's in the eighth house. Uranus in itself is a house, is a planet of disruption, um, impulsive clarity, um, conflict. So, being in the eighth house, this person could experience what I call micro transformations. Sudden, sudden deaths happen. Unfortunately, that could happen. They could experience that, which would be horrible, but it can happen. Finances, they can go through a like sudden, all of a sudden, the finances that is somebody else's, but they somehow have access to. They those people, they can get windfalls from other people's money, from inheritance, like it's just all of a sudden, and then they can be doing good and everything is great, and like say they are a banker, they're making whatever goals, and the finances is just rolling, and then there can be another disruption that comes, and everything is taken away. There's no money coming in. There's this whole what the hell just happened, um, and there it's like it happens throughout life, so that either one or two things. Someone can be very frustrated, walking around, chip on their shoulder, feeling like things never go right, or the other person can actually learn like a healthy attachment to things. So when that disruption comes, it doesn't really take them off of their path, and therefore they have more of an optimism of just yeah, I lost something, but that makes room for something else, and so they can stay more on their path, stay more grounded in the loss and the gains in life, and just kind of take it as it comes, and use that to catapult them into like their next phase in life. They don't, they keep going, they keep moving forward. um, they still are humanitarian, so they still look out for the greater good of the collective. So, but they can handle the ups and the downs a little better once they've evolved some, because they know that, or they have this feeling like there's nothing that is permanent. Everything is temporary, and we're just here to enjoy life um, as it comes to us. They experience life as life is happening for me instead of happening to me. Um, but there again, you have the other side of it, depending on the sign, depending on how someone can receive what is going on. There also can be bitterness that comes with the fact that they feel like nothing ever goes right. There's always some sort of disruption. There's no sense of stability, and it's always a up roller coaster. So, those are the two sides of Uranus here. Pluto is in the eighth house. It's at home. this is where Pluto naturally resides. So it intensifies all the characteristics that the eighth house that we've already mentioned for the eighth house. But look for the Pluto placement here could be obsessed with death and rebirth. They may have a more keen sense of their psychic abilities, a deeper intuition. Um, they are could have like real obsessions that might need attention. They might have um, be psychologists, helping people with transformation, getting their life back on track when things have burned down in their life. There is an accentuation of their sensuality, their sexuality here. There is like being having Pluto in the eighth house is just like giving like extra power to those characteristics. They could be obsessed with other people's money, under other people's income and how they make their income. So like they can do detective work. And it could be detective work like forensic finances, or where they look and see if there's any crimes regarding money and any fraud. But then it can just be in a detective, following the leads to see what the end results may be. They can be obsessed with that type of thing. They will never like just let it go half-assed. They got to finish the project. They got to go as deep as they can go, and may have a difficulty letting it go if it doesn't have a resolution to or the case can't be solved. So yeah, Pluto here, like I said, it's this natural home. It likes being at home. So it's going to like intensify those characteristics that we found in the eighth house. In the sense of transformation, Neptune may have a hard time with transformation, depending on where this transformation, what part of their life this transformation occurs. It can cause psychological problems. It could trigger Neptune placement for trigger them to escape reality. You may have to like pay attention to any type of escape or addictive behaviors with Neptune here in the eighth house. It's the reason why Neptune sometimes have a hard time with dealing with or keeping themselves focused on reality. So when a transformation comes, it's not it's hard to grasp the reality of what's going on. There's a fantasy world that they live in. There's a fantasy filter or a rose-colored filter that they live life through. And when a transformation comes, that kind of disrupts that filter, and navigating reality with the illusional world that they live in can be a challenge for Neptune. Finances, again, they might not be as responsible for other people's finances, like a spouse that has the greater income. They may not be able to be trusted so well. Like I said, not having their feet planted in some cases could lead to some decisions with finances that cannot be so good for the relationship. And I'm gonna say this probably with every time I talk about Neptune. In order for Neptune to work out these challenges, they have to attach themselves spiritually to something greater than themselves. they have to anchor themselves to something and have it as a priority, because that helps keep their head level and being able to keep their boundaries intact, so in their head level, so they can make better sound and decisions that are more even kilter, even headed, yeah, even headed. But one thing again with also tethering themselves to something greater than them, they will have access to a deeper knowing, a deeper intuition, a deeper psychic abilities. Like their psychic abilities would probably be off the chain. It's probably off the chain as well if they're out of alignment, but with it being in alignment, it would just like go into like this super intuitive being, being able to like feel and know, not just in themselves but in other people. There might be a lot of secrets being hidden here with Neptune. A lot of yeah, not able to, either holding someone's secrets could be here, or keeping secrets of their own experiences could be here as well. So one thing to watch out though with Neptune is when when there are transformations and things become unstable, that their mental health gets the attention that they need to be able to like spring back. Which in the eighth house, which is not a planet, but I added it to this series. Um, it shows where we have trauma or wounding from our past. Here could have been a betrayal that had to do with someone vulnerability, someone's intimacy, putting trust in someone that actually betrayed it, and it betrayed it, and it cut really deep. Um, so your trust factor is something that you have to work on continuously, and it depends on the sign that is in. Um, Depending on the sign that's here with Chiron in the eighth house, I still believe it's going to be something with your vulnerability and um, your intimacy with someone. But whether that would be a sexual intimacy or just in relationships in general, um, that's going to have to do with what sign that is going to be here and looking at your personal natal chart. Yeah, because it's a wounding that will always stick with you. It's a wounding that you will always have to work on. It's something will trigger, something will bring it up, and it's going to be another layer that you're going to have to work on, or yeah, from another angle, from another point of view. But it's always going to be something that you're going to have to work on from time to time. But it also can place you in a position of helping others that also have this similar wounding or similar trauma. So yeah, be open to helping someone. It also can, helping someone else can also help you in integrating and getting healing from some of this wounding and the scarring that occurs when Chiron being in